Carter may be the one person everyone is trying to save in Dutton Ranch Season 2, but what if bringing him home is actually the moment everything gets worse? Because the moment Beth and Rip find Carter, Mariano may have nothing left to lose. And that could turn a dangerous rescue mission into a war that puts everyone around them in even greater danger. Carter was taken from the family he had finally begun to trust, and now Beth and Rip are going after him with one goal in mind: bring him home. But the deeper we look at Season 2, the more it feels like Carter's rescue is only the beginning. The real question may not be whether Beth and Rip can find him. The real question is what they have to sacrifice before they can finally bring him back. Season 2 begins with a simple mission, but the consequences could be much bigger than anyone expects. Beth and Rip need to find Carter before Mariano can use him for something even more dangerous. Carter is not just a young boy who happens to be caught in the middle of a conflict. He has become part of Beth and Rip's family. After everything they have already lost, Carter gave them something they were never sure they could have again: a family, a future. And for Rip especially, Carter slowly became someone he could protect like his own son. That is why his kidnapping changes everything. The moment Carter was taken, the peaceful life Beth and Rip were trying to build was destroyed. Beth had finally started to experience something she rarely allowed herself to feel: peace. She could live with Rip without constantly expecting another enemy to appear. She could begin thinking about the future instead of fighting every battle from the past. Carter became part of that future, but Mariano changed all of it with one decision. And now Beth is going into Season 2 as a completely different woman. This is not simply about protecting a ranch anymore. It is not about winning an argument or proving who has more power. Someone took a member of her family, and Beth is the kind of person who becomes most dangerous when someone she loves is threatened. Mariano may believe that taking Carter gives him control, but he may have made one of the biggest mistakes of his life, because Beth does not easily forgive betrayal. And when she decides that someone has crossed a line, she does not stop simply because the other side has more soldiers, more money, or more weapons. Rip could be even more dangerous. Throughout the story, Rip has always been willing to go into places other people would never dare enter. He has followed orders, fought enemies, protected the people he considers family, and accepted the consequences of his actions. But this time, something is different. Rip is not protecting land. He is not protecting a business. He is protecting Carter, his son. That changes the entire mission. Rip may not need a complicated plan if he already knows what he wants. Find Carter, bring him home, and make the people responsible pay for what they did. The trailer gives Rip very few words, but his silence could say more than any speech. He does not look like someone who is still deciding what to do. He looks like someone who has already made his decision. And that is exactly why Mariano should be worried. But there is an important problem. Beth and Rip may want the same result, but they may not want to reach it in the same way. Beth understands that attacking Mariano's organization without knowing what is waiting inside could put Carter in even more danger. She needs information. She needs to know who Mariano trusts, who works for him, where his operation is weakest, and which people could be turned against him. Rip may not have the same patience. If someone gives him Carter's location, he could be ready to move immediately. He may not want to wait for every detail or every piece of information. And that difference between Beth and Rip could create one of the biggest tensions of Season 2. Not because they stop trusting each other, but because they love Carter so much that both may believe their own way is the fastest way to save him. Beth may want to destroy Mariano's operation from the inside. Rip may simply want to find Carter and get him out. And if those two approaches ever collide, the rescue mission could become even more dangerous. Then there is Mariano himself. At first, he appears almost impossible to reach. He has armed men around him. He has money, connections, vehicles, security, and an organization powerful enough to make a direct attack extremely risky. From the outside, all of this makes Mariano look untouchable. But what if all that protection means something else? What if it is not confidence? What if it is fear? A man who believes he has complete control does not always need endless layers of protection. Mariano knows exactly what he has done. He knows he took Carter from Beth and Rip. He knows the kind of people they are. He knows Beth will not simply forget what happened, And he knows Rip will not stop once he decides that Carter must come home. So, Mariano may have believed that kidnapping Carter gave him power, but what if it actually gave Beth and Rip a reason to destroy everything he has built? That is where Season 2 could become much bigger than a simple rescue story. Mariano started this conflict believing he controlled the situation. But the moment Carter was taken, he created a target that could bring multiple enemies toward him. And the more enemies he creates, the harder it becomes to control the people inside his own organization. Because Beth and Rip may not have to fight this war alone. Someone unexpected could change the entire balance of power, and that is where things could become much more dangerous. The question is no longer simply, where is Carter? The real question is, who is willing to help Beth and Rip get him back? Because Mariano's biggest weakness may not be outside his organization. It may already be inside. And if Beth discovers that weakness before Mariano realizes what is happening, the rescue mission could suddenly become the beginning of the biggest fight Dutton Ranch has faced yet. But if Mariano's biggest weakness is already hiding inside his own organization, the next question becomes even more important. Who could actually turn against him? Because Season 2 may be setting up an alliance that nobody would have expected. Beth does not need another soldier. Rip does not need another man with a weapon. What they need is someone who understands Mariano from the in-seat, someone who knows how his organization works, who he trusts, where his people move, and most importantly, where Carter could be hidden. And that could bring Bula into the picture. Bula is not someone Beth would normally choose to trust. During the first season, she learned how dangerous trust could be. She survived by staying ahead of the people around her and protecting herself before anyone else. But Season 2 could put her in a completely different position. Instead of surviving alone, she may finally have a reason to work with people who want the same things she does. The trailer appears to hint at a meeting between Beth and Bula, and the most interesting part is what we do not see. There is no obvious attack, no dramatic fight, no one immediately reaching for a weapon. Instead, there is a feeling that both women are carefully measuring each other, and that silence could be more important than a fight, because neither Beth nor Bula has any reason to fully trust the other. Both women understand manipulation, both know how dangerous secrets can be, and neither one is going to walk into an alliance without wondering what the other person really wants. But there may be one thing they have in common. Mariano. Beth wants Carter back. Bula may have her own reasons for wanting Mariano to lose control, and if those two goals point in the same direction, an alliance could form without either woman ever becoming friends. They do not need friendship, they need a shared enemy. That could make Bula one of the most valuable people in the entire rescue mission. She may know things Beth and Rip could never discover on their own. She may understand which people inside Mariano's organization are truly loyal and which ones are only pretending. She may know where the weak points are, where information moves, and how Mariano's people respond when something goes wrong. And that kind of information could be more powerful than another armed fighter. Because wars are not always won by having more weapons. Sometimes they are won by knowing exactly where to strike. If Beth, Rip, and Bula manage to combine their strengths, Mariano could suddenly find himself facing a completely different enemy. Beth brings strategy, Rip brings force, Bula brings inside knowledge. But putting these three people together could also create a serious problem. None of them likes being controlled. Beth wants to make the decisions. Rip wants action. Bula wants to protect herself. That means their alliance could fall apart before they ever reach Carter. And Mariano may understand that. In fact, he may not need to defeat them directly. He may only need to make them distrust each other. Imagine Beth starts believing Bula is hiding something. Imagine Rip becomes impatient and decides to move before everyone is ready. Imagine Bula begins thinking that Beth is using her as bait. One mistake could expose the entire operation, and Mariano only needs one mistake. That is what makes Carter's rescue so dangerous. Every person involved has something to lose. Every decision carries consequences. And every secret could destroy the mission. But there is another name that could completely change the balance. Someone much closer to Mariano than Beth or Rip could ever be. His own son. At first, this may not seem like the biggest storyline in Season 2. Mariano's son is not standing in front of an army. He is not openly challenging his father. He is not announcing that he wants to destroy the Empire. But when his moments are connected together, a much darker possibility begins to appear. What if he is starting to question everything his father has built? Because living inside Mariano's world is very different from looking at it from the outside. Outsiders see power, money, protection, influence. But someone inside that world sees the consequences. He sees the people who suffer. He sees the fear. He sees what happens when someone disobeys. And Carter's kidnapping could be the moment when everything becomes impossible to ignore. If Mariano's son knows how the organization works, then he could possess something Beth and Rip desperately need: access. He could know the locations Mariano uses. He could know who protects him. He could understand how information moves through the organization. And he could know which doors can be opened without raising suspicion. That makes him dangerous. But perhaps not to Beth and Rip. He could be dangerous to Mariano. The biggest question is whether he is willing to make that choice. Because turning against Mariano would not be a simple betrayal. This is his father. And Mariano is exactly the kind of man who could see betrayal from his own family as the ultimate insult. So his decision becomes extremely important. Does he choose his father, or does he choose redemption? If he chooses to help Beth and Rip, he could become the most valuable person in the entire rescue mission. They do not simply need someone who can fight. They need someone who knows where the doors are, someone who knows which guards can be trusted, someone who knows where Carter could be hidden, and one piece of information at the right moment could change everything. He may not have to fight Mariano directly. He may only have to open one door, reveal one location, give Beth one piece of information, and suddenly Mariano's entire advantage could disappear. But there is one major problem. Mariano could discover the betrayal. And if he does, the consequences could be devastating. That is why his storyline may become one of the biggest ticking time bombs in Season 2. Every moment he spends around his father could bring him closer to making a decision. Every order he follows could make him question himself. And every secret he keeps could become harder to carry. The longer Carter remains missing, the harder it may become for him to stay silent. And that could be exactly what Beth and Rip need. But even with Bula and Mariano's son potentially moving closer to their side, the rescue mission still needs someone capable of holding everything together. Because Beth, Rip, Bula, and Mariano's son may all have different reasons for entering this fight. And if nobody can keep them moving in the same direction, Mariano may not even have to defeat them. They could destroy their own rescue mission. That is where Everett could become much more important than expected. During Season 1, Everett often stayed close to the action without feeling like the person controlling it. But Season 2 could change that. He may become the person who understands that this rescue cannot be carried out by one person alone. Beth brings the strategy, Rip brings the force. Bula brings the information, Mariano's son could bring access, and Everett could be the person who keeps all those pieces moving toward the same goal. But keeping this group together may be almost impossible. Because when Carter's life is on the line, patience becomes difficult. Rip may want to move immediately. Beth may want more information, Bula may still have secrets, and Mariano's son may not even know whether he is ready to betray his own father. That means one wrong decision could expose everyone. And Mariano may be waiting for exactly that moment, because perhaps his greatest weapon has never been his soldiers. Perhaps it has always been division. If he can make Beth doubt Bula, Rip doubt the plan, and Mariano's son lose his courage, the entire rescue mission could collapse without Mariano ever having to fight them directly. And that leaves us with one terrifying possibility. What if Mariano already knows that someone inside his organization is preparing to betray him? What if he is not waiting helplessly for Beth and Rip to attack? What if he is preparing a trap? Because if Carter's kidnapping was carefully planned from the beginning, then the rescue may be exactly what Mariano wants. And if that is true, Beth and Rip could be walking directly into the biggest trap of Season 2. Waken may look like one of the quieter characters in this story, but that could be exactly why he matters so much. While Mariano is surrounded by people who fear him, Waken has something most of them do not have. He knows the man behind the power. He knows how his father thinks, how he reacts when someone disobeys him, and what happens when loyalty begins to disappear. And if Waken has started questioning Mariano's decisions, Carter's kidnapping could be the moment that finally forces him to choose a side. The interesting part is that Waken does not have to suddenly become a hero. In fact, it would make more sense if he struggles with the decision. Mariano is still his father. No matter how much he disagrees with him, walking away from his family would not be easy. Waken has spent years living inside Mariano's world. He understands the rules. He knows what happens to people who betray the organization. He knows that one wrong move could make him the next target. That is what makes his possible betrayal so suspenseful. He cannot simply walk into Beth's camp and announce that he wants to help. If Mariano discovers that too early, Carter's situation could become much worse. Waken would need to hide his intentions while secretly giving Beth and Rip exactly what they need. Maybe it starts with one small piece of information: a location, a name, a vehicle, a guard who can be trusted. One detail may not seem important by itself, but when Beth connects it with everything else she already knows, she could realize that someone inside Mariano's organization is helping them. And that could lead her directly to Waken. But Beth would not trust him immediately. She has lived too long around betrayal to believe someone simply because they say they want to help. She would want proof. She would want to know what Waken gains from helping them. And most importantly, she would want to know whether he is actually trying to save Carter or simply using Beth and Rip to destroy his father. That question could become one of the biggest mysteries of the season. Because what if Waken has his own plan? What if he does want Mariano gone, but he does not care what happens to Beth and Rip afterward? That would create a very dangerous alliance. Beth may need him. Waken may need Beth. Neither one may completely trust the other. And Rip would probably be the least willing to take the risk. For Rip, everything comes back to Carter. He does not care about Mariano's family problems. He does not care about internal politics. He does not care who wants revenge against whom. He wants Carter alive and back at the ranch. If Waken gets in the way of that, Rip may see him as another threat. This could create an emotional conflict between Beth and Rip as well. Beth may understand that Waken is their best chance of getting inside Mariano's operation. Rip may believe that trusting Mariano's son is too dangerous. And for once, neither of them would necessarily be wrong. That is what makes the rescue so unpredictable. There may be no perfect choice. Every option carries a risk. Wait too long and Carter could be moved. Attack too early and Mariano could discover the plan. Trust Waken and he could betray them. Do not trust him and they could lose the one person who knows where Carter is. Meanwhile, Mariano could be watching all of this from the shadows. And this is where his character becomes even more dangerous. A man like Mariano does not need to react emotionally to every threat. He can let other people destroy themselves. If he understands that Beth and Rip are divided, he can use that division. If he realizes Waken is losing faith in him, he can test his son's loyalty. He could give Waken a secret order. He could ask him to prove himself. And Waken may have no choice but to obey if he wants to stay close enough to help Carter. Imagine the pressure of that situation. Waken knows Carter is being held somewhere inside his father's operation. He knows Beth and Rip are coming. He knows Mariano is suspicious. And every time his father asks him a question, Waken has to decide how much truth he can reveal without exposing everything. One wrong answer could end the rescue before it begins. And if Mariano discovers the betrayal, he may not simply punish Waken. He could use him. He could turn Waken into bait. That would be the ultimate trap. Beth and Rip might believe Waken has finally chosen their side, only to discover that Mariano has been using him to discover their plans. If that happens, the rescue could become a disaster. But there is another possibility. What if Waken really does betray his father? Then Mariano's empire could begin collapsing from the inside. Because Waken is not just another employee, he is family. And when someone inside the family breaks away, everyone starts asking questions. Why did he leave? What does he know? Who else is thinking the same thing? That kind of doubt can spread quickly.